What would you do if repairs never solved the problem? I thought I was solving a maintenance issue, but the maintenance issue wasn't the problem. At first, nothing felt wrong. She just moved in, normal move in, minor issues, chip paint, loose shelf in the closet. Then she mentions being in touch with somebody from the fire department about a smoke detector issue. Fixed everything, done, no problem. A few weeks later, I get another message about smoke coming from the stove. I sent someone to check it out. I never heard of anything like that happening before, but it sounded like a fire hazard, so fine, no problem. Stove replaced. After that, the complaint stopped for a minute. And then a new one started. The hot water would only stay hot for a short period of time. After everything else had already been resolved, this was the ongoing issue that got crazy. So I met the maintenance guy there early one morning. I wanted to make sure everything was completed. I knocked on the door. She answered the door and was wearing an open robe. Nothing underneath, exposed, and body parts falling out. So I said, "Could you go put some clothes on? We'll wait." The guy with me laughed and said, "Why would you tell her to go put clothes on?" When she came back, dressed, we went inside. He turned the temperature up on the hot water tank. Everything appeared to be resolved. And before leaving, I handed her a 5-day notice because she was behind on rent. At that point, all the repairs had been addressed. She had nothing left to complain about, which is what I remember thinking. But what did she do next? The issue came back again. For the second hot water complaint, I scheduled a plumber instead of just general maintenance. I wasn't there, but he sent photos. The old heating elements were removed and new ones were installed. He stayed for a little while and confirmed that the water was working properly. The next day, same thing again. Called the same plumbers back out. She didn't answer the door. We scheduled for another day. They showed up a few minutes late and she claimed she was no longer home. So I scheduled a third time. This is when they determined the entire hot water tank needed to be replaced. The same day, they picked up a brand new hot water tank. They sent pictures of it in the box and pictures after it was installed. Everything was good, right? No. A day or two later, same thing. At this point, I didn't know who to believe, so I went there myself. I walked in the bathroom, sat on the edge of the tub, turned on the water, and let the water run for a while. For some reason, I started feeling uncomfortable around this person, so I didn't plan to stay long. But I was there long enough for the water to get warm. I stayed a little while longer, and it didn't seem to get hot. But at the same time, I couldn't tell if she had already been running the water before I made it, knowing that by the time I got there, it wouldn't be hot. And I just wanted to be done with it. So I scheduled another appointment with the same plumbers that installed the brand new water tank, but this time I posted a notice on her door in advance. So that way she understood if she wasn't home or refused to open the door, we would gain access with the management key. The day of the appointment, we showed up exactly on time, knocked on the door, nothing. Then heard some movement and eventually she opened the door. I stepped outside and went back to my car while they worked. They checked it out again, but now, since it's an electric hot water tank, not gas, they're saying there's an electric issue. But when I came back, I noticed something was a little off. They weren't focused on the repairs anymore. They were laughing and talking about how much fun they have on the lake over the weekends and inviting her out to their boat. Her response was mentioning her boyfriend, and she started talking about how he's an electrician. I didn't say anything. Just got rid of the plumbers that were getting way too friendly. And I kept in mind what she said about her boyfriend being an electrician. Next, I called a company that specialized in electric hot water tanks. They came out, made adjustments, recorded temperatures. They stayed for a while and documented that the hot water was staying hot like it was supposed to. Things finally got quiet for a little while. By this time, it's already been a few months of this complaint and no rent payments, but the eviction process has already started. So a few days later, complains again, the water's only staying hot for a couple of minutes and then getting cold. This time, since it's an electric hot water tank and there might have been electric issues, I called out an electrician, posted a notice, met him there, knocked on the door. She answers, fully dressed this time. He goes in, I go to my car to let him see what's happening. if anything, and just wait until he gets back in touch. 5 to 10 minutes later, he called me, but he's whispering, and it was weird. Then he says, I need you to come in and take a look at this. I get there, the door's open, but the apartment is pitch black since he had the power off. Turn on my flashlight on my phone. I see him standing in the hallway in front of an electric panel with the headlamp on, so I go over to him. He has the whole cover off, and he's pointing inside to try to show me what's happening. And I'm looking inside trying to see what he's talking about, and he's still whispering, and he says, the wires are cut. So the wires that supplied the hot water tank had been cut. Then I thought about what she said about the boyfriend that's an electrician, and it all made sense. I didn't say anything. After all that craziness and knowing how argumentative this person could be, it didn't make sense to say anything. He repaired the wires, restored the power, and we left. And I had no plans of coming back. Luckily, by then we already had a court date scheduled. And I was there with my attorney, and when the case was called, we stepped forward to the judge. She also had representation. They tried mentioning the repair issues, but the judge looked at her and asked one question first. Where is the rent? She handed over the envelope of all the back rent. And when the repairs were brought up again, I showed photos, invoices, multiple receipts, and also mentioned how the wires were mysteriously cut to the hot water tank. Then the judge said something that completely reframed everything for me. He said if the repairs aren't feasible, you don't have to make them. The lease can be terminated and the tenant can move. I already knew I wouldn't be returning to the unit, but hearing that just confirmed it legally. So I wasn't surprised when she fell behind on rent again, but instead of another court date and being put out by the sheriff, she moved and I celebrated. So, what lessons did I learn from all this chaos? 1. Rent withholding laws. One of the biggest misconceptions is that tenants think they can stop paying rent because something isn't working. And that's not how it works. Under Chicago's residential landlord and tenant ordinance, a tenant can only withhold rent if all of the following happen. The tenant gives written notice of the defect. The property owner is given at least 14 days to make repairs. Any rent withheld reflects the reduced value of the unit, not the full rent. The withheld rent needs to be held in an escrow account, not spent, not in your pocket. Illinois law is very clear about this. Tenants may only repair and deduct under strict conditions, and courts have repeatedly ruled that tenants who skip proper notice and waiting periods cannot use maintenance issues as a defense of non-payment. In fact, Illinois courts have stated outright that a tenant may not assert rent withholding as a defense unless they fully comply with the law. In my case, the judge ordered her to immediately pay every month the back rent and delivered the rent directly to my attorney. That's how this is enforced. So the bottom line is, maintenance issues cannot be weaponized. If you document your efforts and follow the law, the court will back you up. Number 2, courts care about feasibility. You are not required to fix everything. This was the most eye-opening moment for me when the judge said, if the repairs aren't feasible, you don't have to make them. The lease can be terminated and the tenant can be required to move. Many landlords think they're legally required to fix every complaint, no matter how unreasonable or endless it becomes. Illinois law recognizes an implied warranty of habitability, which means the property must be safe, sanitary, functional for normal living. The standard is habitability, not perfection. Problems or situations that become structurally complex or financially unfeasible do not require endless repairs. In those cases, courts often allow and prefer leases to be terminated rather than forcing the landlord into infinite repair loops. Number 3, don't wait to start an eviction. Weaponized complaints usually have an agenda. Starting an eviction doesn't mean you stop making repairs. It means you stop letting time work against you. In Chicago, delays often benefit the tenant, not because the tenant is right, but because time equals leverage. Most renters are reasonable. Sometimes. Most of the time. Okay, maybe. But there's a small percentage who use constant complaints strategically to delay evictions, avoid paying rent, or to manufacture a defense. Cook County data shows that complaints spike about 30% immediately after rent increases or eviction notices. Once you recognize this pattern, the worst thing you can do is react emotionally. The best thing to do is document behavior and follow the process. Patterns matter in court. Number 4, documentation is everything. It's your shield. Photos, invoices, notices, dates, text messages, not because you expect to go to court, but because when stories conflict, documentation is your credibility. The law assumes landlords are responsible for habitability, but it also protects landlords who can prove they made reasonable repair attempts. I kept records of every call, every invoice, every photo, every notice, every message. But without the paper trail, a tenant can claim negligence, and the court might believe them. So keep a running maintenance log, use an app, share a drive, keep before and after photos. Paperwork is boring, but at the end of the day, it can save you money. Number 5, learn to spot the problem patterns early. If they start off at a showing with an attitude, it's likely that type of tension will continue indefinitely. When someone approaches every interaction as a fight, it rarely turns collaborative later. The way tenants communicate during small issues often predicts how they behave during serious ones. Repeated accusations, hostility, or refusal to cooperate aren't just personality traits, they're warning signs. Ignoring those signs doesn't make them go away. Number 6, always stay calm and avoid confrontation. Escalation creates inspections, violations, and fines. Calm, consistent action protects you, even when someone else is trying to manufacture chaos. I never confronted her directly. I didn't argue. I kept communication in writing. I let licensed professionals in the legal system do their jobs. According to legal labor and housing dispute data, roughly 20% of landlord-tenant conflicts escalate into legal or police involvement when emotions replace documentation. Arguing and showing frustration can turn a maintenance issue into a harassment claim. Paper is protection, and the legal process is protection. Number 7, set professional boundaries with tenants and vendors. This part doesn't get talked about enough. The tenant repeatedly answered the door wearing a robe or underwear. I had to tell her to put on clothes before staff could enter. Later, she started befriending the 2 plumbers and talking about hanging out. I never used them again. As a property owner, you're responsible for professionalism on both sides of the door. And if most of your tenants are women, like mine are, this is even more critical for comfort, safety, and liability. Key takeaways. Being a landlord isn't just about collecting rent. It's about managing people, law, and chaos. Here's what the situation reinforced for me. 1, always stay calm and document everything. Your records are your protection. 2, you are not required to fix every request. Only what's feasible and necessary for habitability. 3, tenants cannot legally withhold rent unless they follow strict legal steps, including having written notice and funds in an escrow account. 4, start the eviction process early when patterns emerge. Delays shift leverage away from you. 5, set and enforce professional boundaries with tenants and vendors to protect safety, credibility, and liability. Until next time, remember, chaos will come, but what's most important is knowing how to protect your property, your cash flow, and your peace when it does.